Electricity. What would life be like without it?
Take a look at this kitchen. It's full of electrical appliances. Here's a fridge. There's a freezer underneath. Here's an electric oven. This is a microwave. There's a radio, a coffee maker, an electric toaster, an electric hob, an electric kettle. And there are all the lights too. All these things need electricity. And that's just the kitchen. What about all the electrical appliances that can be found in the rest of the house?
We all use a lot of electricity, and yet only a small proportion of electricity is used in the home. What about all the electricity that's used in shops and offices, and for things like streetlights and trains, and most of all, in factories? All the things that we buy need electricity to make them.
But what's wrong with that? After all, electricity is clean. It doesn't cause pollution. Well, using electricity doesn't cause pollution, but making it does.
Most of the world's electricity is made by burning fossil fuels. That's coal, oil and natural gas. This power station, for example, here is burning coal. It's really a gigantic steam engine. The heat from the coal makes steam, and the steam is used to turn the generators. At the moment, generating electricity like this is the cheapest way of generating electricity. And up to now, the world has had very good stocks. But of course, that situation may change. I mean, it's likely, for example, that in 50 years we may have no more oil. When you burn fuel, you make waste gases, and those waste gases pollute the air. Carbon dioxide, for example, traps the sun's heat and is slowly warming up the Earth. Scientists call this global warming, or the greenhouse effect. And some power stations give off a gas called sulfur dioxide, and that makes rain acid. And acid rain damages forests, it damages buildings, and it's poisoning lakes and rivers.
So, with all those problems from fossil fuels, what about nuclear power? Is that any better?
Well, there is, or there should be, no pollution from nuclear power because the nuclear power station is not burning any fuel. It's also a very high energy source. A little bit of nuclear fuel, perhaps that big, gives as much energy as all the coal you could put in a great big truck, a great big lorry.
So why do some people not like nuclear power?
Well, there are two big problems with nuclear power. One is that when the nuclear fuel has lost all its energy, it has to be taken out of the reactor, but it's still giving off radiation, and that radiation will last for hundreds of years. So it has to be stored somewhere very, very safe. And of course, you have to build and design and look after nuclear power stations with extra care, because if you have a disaster, I mean, it really is a disaster.
Well, what about hydroelectric power then? Is that better than nuclear power or fossil fuel?
Well, it has two big advantages. I mean, there's no fuel to pay for, so it may sound as though the energy is free. And of course, it doesn't cause any pollution. So those are big advantages.
So what are the disadvantages?
But what are the disadvantages? The energy isn't free because the dams are very, very expensive to build. And of course, it involves flooding an area. And that area may be home for plants and animals and humans. And again, the dams have to be built to very, very high standards, because if there's an accident, people's lives could be risked if for example, a dam bursts, as indeed happened in Italy several years ago.
Right, okay. So those are the ways that are used at the moment then, hydroelectric power, nuclear power and fossil fuel. But we hear a lot today about alternative means of energy.
Well, one of the most common has been used for centuries to do other jobs, and that's windmills. I mean, they've been used for hundreds of years. But today they can be used for generating electricity. We have solar energy. That means solar cells, for example, which turn the sun's energy into electricity. Rather like the solar cell you get on some small calculators. Or also another way of using solar energy is to use a gigantic mirror and to focus the sun's heat and use it to boil water.
Now, presumably the big advantages of those forms is that they don't cause pollution.
That's right, yes.
And also the energy source is free.
That's right,
So
yes.
with those advantages, why don't we use them?
Well, one of the problems is actually getting enough energy from them. I mean, if we look at windmills, for example, the wind does not carry much energy, not compared with coal, oil or gas. If we take a power station like this, to get the same energy from a windmill or a site of windmills, you would need hundreds of windmills. And they're expensive to build, and they also happen to be very noisy. Solar power, again, it's very difficult to get large quantities of energy. So what it comes down to is that at the moment, fossil fuel, plenty of energy, all the energy we want, and the alternatives are often expensive to set up. And although they have no fuel, there's no fuel to pay for, if we go for those, the cost of electricity will probably be more.
Electricity can be produced cheaply with nuclear and fossil fuels, but at a cost of polluting the earth and the air that we breathe. There are cleaner alternatives, but these would make electricity more expensive. Would you pay more for your electricity if it would reduce pollution?
Every choice has its price. Think about that the next time that you switch on a light or play a video.
It's difficult to imagine life without electricity. But what price are we prepared to pay for it?
Give